That night in Jerusalem should have been quiet. Passover meals were ending, homes were closing, lamps were burning low. But beneath the surface, the city was awake. Roman authorities were already on edge during festivals like this. Crowds meant risk. Rumors spread fast. One public disturbance could turn into panic before sunrise. And somewhere inside that pressure, a decision had already been made. What makes the night unsettling isn't the arrest itself, it's how coordinated everything feels. People move through darkness without hesitation. Locations are already known. Timing already exists. Even the betrayal feels less spontaneous the closer you look at it. And the gospel accounts make that tension impossible to ignore. Matthew focuses on the betrayal. Luke slows down the emotional pressure. John adds details the others leave out entirely. Different angles, different memories, but together they create the same feeling. This wasn't a normal night. Something was closing in long before anyone reached the garden. And maybe the strangest part is this: the people involved seem to understand pieces of what's happening, but not the whole thing. Fear, exhaustion, confusion, urgency, it's all there at once, which raises uncomfortable questions. Why were authorities willing to move at night instead of publicly? Why do the accounts remember the same hours so differently? And what exactly was happening inside the city while most people thought the night was over? The timing wasn't accidental. If authorities wanted a public arrest, they could have made one during the day. Jesus had already been teaching openly in crowded areas, surrounded by people, impossible to miss. But that's exactly the problem. Too many people were watching. As written in Matthew 26, the concern wasn't whether they could arrest him, it was when. The fear was public reaction. Passover had filled Jerusalem beyond normal capacity, and tension already sat beneath the surface of the city. A public confrontation in daylight could shift control instantly. So the movement happens differently, quietly, away from crowds, away from visibility. And that detail matters, because it reveals this wasn't just about removing a person, it was about controlling perception, controlling reaction, keeping the situation contained before it spread beyond the people managing it. John presents the night with even more structure. The group arriving in the garden isn't small or uncertain, it moves with preparation. They already know where to go. Judas doesn't search for the location, he leads them directly to it. Same event, different emphasis. Matthew highlights the tension surrounding the arrest. John highlights how prepared the operation already was. And together, they reveal something unsettling. This wasn't spontaneous pressure, it was calculated movement. But calculation creates another problem, because once events are controlled this tightly, everyone involved starts revealing what they're afraid of. And that's where the night begins to change. Fear moves through the night differently, depending on who holds power. The disciples fear what's about to happen. The authorities fear losing control. Rome fears disorder. And somewhere between all of them, the city itself sits under pressure, unaware of how close everything is to shifting. That's what makes the accounts feel so tense. Nobody reacts calmly. As written in Luke 22, exhaustion mixes with emotional strain. The people closest to the situation can barely stay awake, not because nothing is happening, but because too much is happening at once. Matthew remembers panic spreading quickly once the arrest begins. John focuses on confrontation and control, describing details the others leave out entirely. Different memories, same atmosphere, fear. And the fear itself reveals something important, because powerful systems usually avoid moving like this unless they feel vulnerable first. Arrests in darkness, controlled movement,
rushed decisions, these are not signs of confidence. They're signs that pressure has already reached a dangerous point. But the strangest part is how isolated everyone becomes. The disciples scatter, the crowd disappears, the city keeps sleeping, and what had felt public only hours earlier suddenly becomes private, hidden, compressed into the darkness before morning. Which raises another question entirely. If so many people were afraid that night, what exactly did they believe was about to happen?
Once the arrest happened, everything accelerated. There's almost no pause in the accounts. Movement replaces discussion. One location leads immediately to another. Questioning begins before sunrise. Decisions start forming while most of the city is still asleep. And that pace feels intentional. Because the longer something like this remains visible, the harder it becomes to control. Crowds wake up, rumors spread, reactions form. So the night keeps moving before daylight can interrupt it. As written in Mark 14, the transition from arrest to interrogation happens quickly, almost aggressively. John adds details that make the sequence feel even more organized, with movements between authorities already prepared in advance. Luke focuses more on the emotional collapse happening around the event itself. Denial, confusion, fear spreading outward in real time. Different angles, same momentum. And that momentum reveals something unsettling. This wasn't just an arrest, it was containment. Because once events begin moving faster than people can process them, control shifts toward the ones directing the pace. But speed creates pressure, and pressure exposes people. The disciples begin separating from each other. Public loyalty starts collapsing into distance. Even those closest to the situation begin reacting differently once survival becomes personal. And maybe that's the detail nobody talks about enough. The night didn't just expose one person, it exposed everyone around him too. Because when fear and pressure rise together, people stop revealing what they believe. They reveal what they protect most.
By the time morning arrived, the outcome already felt decided. That's what makes the night so unsettling. Not just the arrest itself, but how quickly everything closed in afterward. The movement, the secrecy, the pressure, the fear, it all compressed into a few dark hours before sunrise. And once daylight appeared, the system was already ahead of everyone else. But the accounts reveal something deeper than political control. They reveal exposure, because every group involved shows what it's truly protecting. Authorities protect stability, Rome protects order, the disciples protect themselves, and under enough pressure, even loyalty begins to fracture. That's why the night feels so heavy. Not because nobody understood what was happening, but because everyone understood part of it, just not enough to stop it. And maybe that's the detail people overlook most. The arrest didn't begin when soldiers entered the garden. It began much earlier, when fear, pressure, and control started quietly shaping every decision around it. And once that process started, the night was already moving towards something unavoidable. Because systems under pressure rarely slow down, they tighten. And sometimes the most revealing moments in history happen long before the crowd finally notices them. If this changed how you see that night, subscribe, like, and share your perspective below. Because the deeper you look into these accounts, the more you realize how much was happening beneath the surface before the world even woke up.